Hello, and welcome to the Business Advocate Podcast. My name is Russell Carrier. I am the host. I am with First Choice Business Brokers of East Tennessee in Nashville. And today we have an excellent guest. We are going to be talking about mergers and acquisitions. We are going to be talking about how does a business owner prepare to exit their business. We're also going to be talking about what buyers should be looking at when they acquire a business. And so my guest today is Bennett Lebowitz, and he is with Pando Consulting Group. Bennett, welcome to the podcast. I hope I didn't assassinate your name too bad.
I've heard worse. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So, what is the pronunciation? Correct me on your last name.
It's Lebowitz. So
Lebowitz. Okay, awesome. Well, Bennett, thank you. We are going to dive in nice and slow. This is not going to be a super detailed podcast. It'll really depend on you guys that are listening. If you want more information, please let us know. This is on video. You can find us on YouTube. Please send us comments, questions, anything that you need or would like to learn more of. I'm going to tell you guys that up front. So as we look at mergers and acquisitions, and just so everybody knows, Bennett and I have these conversations quite a bit.
yes.
So we're going to be rehashing a little bit. So Bennett, just kind of give a quick overview, a little bit about what you do, just to kind of give guidance to everybody listening.
Yeah, so Pando Consulting Group is really a community of advisors that we work with our clients on helping them understand the realities of going to market and preparing them for the due diligence process. Part of that is understanding the value of your company, but also understanding what that process of due diligence actually walks you through and what a buyer is actually looking for. So we basically go in and we walk them through that process, hopefully years in advance, because we understand that it is a lot to do. We usually compress it in 18 to 24 months is our ideal timeline. But ultimately, we want you to enter the marketplace from a position of strength and understanding what your company is worth. So when you get an LOI, you know if it's a fair value or not, but also understanding that you are prepared to go through that due diligence process and answer any questions that a buyer has.
Okay. So I'm going to start you right off from the beginning. Why is this going to take 12 to 24 months?
A lot of times when we come in, there's a lot of statistics out there that 70 to 80% of companies that enter the marketplace do not sell successfully. And so that's a staggering number. And so we are working with companies that they want to change the outcome of that process. They want to be able to control the controllables and also be able to walk in and know exactly what their company is worth. And that takes time. And it really depends. We find that if it's anything less than 12 months, we don't really have a lot of capacity to change things inherently throughout the business. And that's ultimately what our process walks a client through is looking at your financial and operational efficiencies and inefficiencies that are going to discount you at the time of sale. So in order to be able to actually get in there, understand what's going on, evaluate you, and then actually get things done, we understand that you're running a business day to day and that we can't just throw all of this on your plate at one time. It takes money, time, and energy to be able to implement these things. And ultimately, your staff is the one that's going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And so, one, we need to understand, do you have the right people on the bus to be able to implement these things? And if not, that's something that's going to take time to correct. So ideally, we say 18 to 24 months. We have cases right now that we're working on that are 12 months out. But we just try to set the parameters of expectations and saying, we're not going to be able to necessarily get all of these things done, but we'll hit kind of the low hanging fruit that's going to maximize your value.
Okay. So when businesses, and we deal with this all the time as a brokerage, I get a call, I want to sell my business. Great. And we do provide valuations on businesses, and we start to dig in. And we find that the person may be ready to sell, but the business isn't. And this is where we work with folks like you, because we don't provide the service to go in, because a lot of it has to do with finances when we get called, because that's what we truly focus on.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things operationally that we learn about through conversations that are glaring. And I think we kind of have to take a step back and let's start from the buyer view of a business, because I think this will help sellers understand why, when they come to us to say, we want to sell today, and we tell them, you're not ready, there's reasons for this. It's not that we want to put you off. It's not that we want to make your life difficult. Is we truly want to get you the best value for what you built.
Yeah,
So let's look at it from the buyer perspective.
sure.
I know what buyers are looking for because I get calls every day from buyers. I want to hear it from your perspective, because you mentioned before we even started the podcast that you want to talk both sides because you work with buyers. What are buyers looking for in a business today?
So a qualified buyer, let's start there, because a qualified
Okay.
buyer, I think that's really important. There's a lot of people who want to own a company. They want to buy a company, but have never owned a company, and they don't really know what their long-term objective is. And so when I say a qualified buyer, we will walk those people or those buyers through a deal thesis development process. So we can understand exactly what it is that you're looking for and what the ultimate objective is, so that you're not just chasing every opportunity that's out there, which is very time consuming and costly. We would rather you be kind of laser focused on exactly what it is that you're looking for, so that we can talk to brokers like yourself and try to find sellers that are going to line up with what those initiatives are. So the first thing is it's an investment, right? They are looking for a way to get an ROI or a greater ROI than maybe putting their money in the market. They are, depending on the type of buyer, if it's a strategic buyer, they're looking to get into a new vertical or a new marketplace so they can enhance their core operations. So that's a very specific type of buyer. Then you have private equity firms, family offices. They're looking for investment opportunities. A lot of times they are kind of stripping companies down, rolling them up and consolidating them into existing holdings. There's internal buyers. There are family companies that have next generation buyers. So all of these categories of buyers have unique perspectives on what their long-term objective is. And so that's really important to understand what that purpose is, so that we can then help them facilitate that transaction in a way, with working with a broker to say, hey, this is the type of company they're looking for, and this is why. The other side is that post-merger kind of acquisition phase. You bought the company, you go in the next day, now what? That's where a lot of the work really comes into play. And that's where we come in and leveraging our community and collaborators, because it does take a community to help that integration, especially if it's into an existing company. You got personnel, you got systems and processes, you got technology, you got services and products, you got cultures, you got identity statements of missions and values, you got marketing, you got all of these aspects, accounting. How do you do that? How do you marry those two together? And it really is a marriage, right? And just like a traditional marriage, you marry your spouse for exactly who they are, and then you realize that kind of external family tree starts growing. You're like, oh God, I didn't know about Uncle Ted, and he's coming to Thanksgiving next year. And so, it's one of those things where you're just like, we want to uncover as much of those areas of the company that they're acquiring, to see where the issues are going to be once that acquisition really takes place.
Okay. So a couple of things that I get asked all the time. Number one, everybody wants to understand the finances of the business,
Sure.
right? Number one question, are they profitable? Are they making money? Am I going to be able to pay the note if I'm getting a loan? And am I going to have money left over? Great. Most people get that. The other side that I get asked quite a bit is, do they have their policies and procedures in place? Is it written down? Basically, am I going to get a guidebook of how to operate this business the way that they have where they've been successful?
All right.
So that is one of the key components when I'm asking sellers about their business before we bring it to market. Do you have this in place? Those are one of the things I get asked all the time. The other piece is, do you have staff in place that can run this business without the seller?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a big
Those
one.
are the big three that I get asked all the time. Is that similar for you? I mean, when you're working with buyers, how important are those three in the buying process?
It's everything because, what we found is that there are companies typically under 10 million in revenue have a very tactical approach to business. And when I say that, they're dealing with day-to-day issues and they are putting out fires on a daily basis. They're not fixing problems, right? And a lot of times we're running into these companies that are income based companies. That's what they're focused on. It's a lifestyle company. Really, where we're wanting to get them to is more of a strategic mindset where we are building systems and processes to solve problems so that we're not on this treadmill of every day I walk in and yes, I have my agenda for the day. And as soon as I walk in the door, ultimately I'm just putting out fires all day. And that list just keeps growing and growing and growing. And the role of a CEO is to really help facilitate that vision, right? To make sure that the strategy of that company has some continuity and traction throughout the years to get to that end goal. What we find is there was never really an established end goal. They don't know what that looks like. If they're growing, then we're good. But a lot of times we'll walk in and we'll see companies that are growing on revenue, but their profitability is either staying flat or decreasing. And that's a problem, right? And we understand that as you're growing a company, you're going to have a lot more cost associated with that growth, but there should be a trend pattern of that profitability starting to show up on the P&L, right? And if that's not happening, then we have some other issues and inefficiencies that are taking place. And a lot of times we run into the systems and processes that are the issue. And business owners feel like that the solution is always throwing human capital at the problem. We need to hire more. We need more people. We need more qualified people. And the reality is that what we find is that they're not working efficiently. You haven't even maximized the people that you already have on staff. You just need to put structure around their position and what their responsibilities are and be able to qualify when they are doing something that they're doing it in the most efficient manner. And if they're not, that you can identify very quickly where it is that that gap exists so that you can restructure that SOP to finally get it in as good of a position as it's possible. But understanding that you're always going to need to go back and tweak that SOP to make sure that it's still relevant to where you are in business. Business is always evolving. So do the SOPs. And a lot of times what we'll find is, yeah, we have SOPs, we have them documented. When was the last time you did that? Oh, God, probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And it's like, are you the same business that you were 10, 15 years ago? Oh, God, no, not at all. Well, we need to go back and look at that. And so there should be a process that every year you're constantly going back and looking at that, even if you're not doing it throughout the year.
Very good. So you mentioned 10 million and under and then 10 million and over. This applies in our world to most. We try to get everybody on the same boat, even if they're $1 million business, a $2 million business, right? Even the smaller businesses that are out there, you still need to have all these SOPs in place. I look at it, every business owner You are the CEO of your business. Yes, you may be very tactical in your business, but you want to elevate yourself eventually. And so you want to get your finances in order. You want to get your policies and procedures in order. You want to make sure you're hiring the right staff, right? And building efficiency within your business.
Right.
I think that goes, I don't care what size you are. That's just my humble opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think look, when you're a business owner and you're starting out, kind of equated to a restaurant, right? You're the dishwasher, you're the cook, you're the hostess, you're the busboy, you're everything, right? And it's out of necessity because you don't have the capital to go out there and hire that. And so what ends up happening is you start kind of getting more you progress through the years of ownership and you haven't offloaded a lot of those tasks. And so then you have a company that has a really high level of owner reliance. And that to a buyer is an immediate like, nope, because I'm buying you, I'm buying your company. You're going to go away at some point, and I need to know that there's continuity. That once I acquire this company, it's going to be able to achieve the same success that it did when you were at the helm. And so it's not the fault of the ownership. It's just a scenario that there was never a strategy to work themselves out of their core job and core responsibilities and really start leveraging their strengths and hiring on their weaknesses. And so, we always use the analogy of, we walk in and the business owner is holding the reins so tight that they're literally choking the life out of the company. And if we can just get them to ease up a little bit, what they realize is they actually have more control over their company in the day-to-day and actually the direction the company is going. So, right now, if you look at what's going on in the world, you have Tupperware that's going out of business. You have TGI Fridays that's shutting down stores. Kmart's out of business. All these large companies, when I was a kid growing up, they were like the places to go, the places to be. And you wonder like what took place where you became irrelevant. And it's because there was nobody leading the direction of the company. They were just dealing with managing their income and their revenues and just trying to keep the status quo in place. And what we're trying to say is you need to always have that disruptor mindset. You always need to look at who's coming into your marketplace and how they're disrupting your core business. But you also need to look at, is your current customer going to be your customer in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Or is there going to be a new customer base that you need to go after today so that when you get to that point, they already know who you are and they're already buying from you? They may not be your majority buyer, but they know who you are, right? And they're still coming to you. And as they get older, they're going to be able to buy more and more from you and become the majority of your revenue stream.
Absolutely. You actually touched on a lot of good points there. Yes, we're seeing a lot of our name brand businesses that we grew up with disappearing.
Yep.
And a lot of it was, and still is, not being able to predict what's happening. And every business owner, you need to be able to have that vision. And I mean, let's face it, not everybody does.
Right.
Right. And I'm going to throw this out there, and I throw it out there almost in every podcast. There's a great book out there called E-Myth, E-Myth Mastery. If you're a business owner, get that book, listen to it, read it. It talks about exactly what Bennett is alluding to. I'll stay with the restaurant. When you start a restaurant, you're wearing all these hats. And if you don't start delegating and letting people take over some of these hats, you're constraining your business. It's never going to grow to its true potential. E-Myth covers that. It talks about building on an org chart. Your hat may be in all of them to begin with, but you know the structure of your business as it grows.
Yes.
And so you can start filling in names where your name is for all those positions. But you have a visual chart of what your business should look like when you think it's full, right? At the level that you're predicting, and we should have a business plan where our business 5-year business plan should be, right?
Absolutely.
And I want to take it a step further because you hit on something that is vital today. And this is where we're going to be, I'm going to say 12 months from now, 18 months from now, and 36 months. The 3-year, 5-year, 7-year, depending on your industry, is not relevant anymore.
Yeah.
Things are changing much faster for most businesses right now more than ever because of technology.
Yeah.
So you have to look, and Bennett, you nailed it. If you're not looking what's coming down the path for your business and how it's going to change, you are going to become the next Blockbuster.
Right. Right. Well,
Somebody else.
I
Go
was
ahead,
just going to
Bennett.
say, you look at Kmart and Walmart, right? When I was a kid, Kmart was actually kind of like a superior brand to Walmart, right? It kind of always, maybe it's just where my mom took me, but and little by little, Walmart just started to overtake, and now they're, I think, the largest employer in the world, and they're a mainstay, right? And there's a reason. There was a fork in the road for both companies, and Walmart chose the one that they started looking at where the future of their company lies in their market. And I think Kmart just kind of kept the status quo. They just kept moving in the same direction. They didn't break off when they needed to. And it took a lot of years. I mean, we're talking 30 years, but now they're here. And if you're not growing, you're dying. I remember my dad always telling me that. We're from a family of entrepreneurs, and it's like, if you're not growing, you're dying. And that death may come decades down the road, but it will show up. It will rear its ugly head. And so you always have to evolve. You always have to be doing that. But if you're tied into the day to day and you can't get your head above water to even see where you are, then ultimately you're going to be on that path and you didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is say, hey, I don't care if you're going to sell in 6 months or 6 years. There's going to be a point where you're going to want to transfer your ownership in some capacity. And we're all going to die at some point. So that transfer is definitely going to happen. We know that. So what does that look like? Let's at least position your company so that when you decide it's the right time, you're ready to go. And you're that low hanging fruit in the buyer's world instead of all the other 70 to 80% of the companies that are in distress, or they're selling out of pain, or whatever it is that they're going to market for. You're going to stand out. And we just want to change that narrative and help educate business owners around what that really looks like, and saying, hey, you can truly write the ending of your story and pass on that legacy to a new buyer and let them take that on.
Absolutely. We have a saying, there are those who plan to sell, and then there are those who have to sell.
Right.
Okay. Which do you want to be? And Bennett, you nailed it again. You keep saying all the right things here. That's why you're a guest. Even if you're not ready to sell today, eventually it's going to happen to everybody.
Yep.
Right? You're either going to sell your business, you're going to close your business, or you're going to pass it on.
Yep.
Those are your choices. And that's for every business out there.
Yeah. So my family owns a 78-year-old company. We are partners. My brothers and I are third generation. And, it's one of those things that we're living it, right? My dad's about to be 85. We have good management, but we don't have strong leadership necessarily. We didn't do all the right things that we needed to do. And we're going to market now as we speak. And it's going to be really interesting. Are we going to be the 70 to 80%? Or are we going to be that 20% that did what we needed to do to really prepare to go to market? And I don't know. Have me on again and I'll let you know what the outcome is. But, the idea is that even though it's our family business and I have very little control in what we can and cannot do in that business right now, it's frustrating because it's a great legacy company. And, the business doesn't always have to be the legacy point. It can be the pathway to a new legacy, and having that liquidity event really can create, that new generational legacy that creates other opportunities. Right. And to
Right.
me, that's a continuation, not really a dead end of that legacy. It's just a continuation that, my daughters will one day understand what that means. But, you know, 2 generations from now, they probably won't even know the name of this company. And that is something that it's really sad, but there's just not a lot of companies that make it this long. And we need to be able to provide and have an enduring legacy for the next generation. And I think that's really the main motivation of why I do what I do, because I see the other side of it. We're living it on one side of the coin, and I'm trying to do something about it on the other side. So it's an interesting dynamic, but it's reality.
Absolutely. And I mean, people sell for different reasons,
Yeah.
right? And the big trend right now, when people sell their business, especially if they owned it for 10, 20, 30 years, this is all they know in life.
Mhm.
And they can't see beyond it.
It becomes part of their identity, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's something that you did for so long that if you don't have it, what are you going to do?
Right.
So there's a huge emotional portion to this that most people don't realize. And I don't think most people understand that when deals fall apart at the end, it's typically because it's an emotional decision,
Mhm.
not a factual decision or a business decision.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing right now with people that have owned these businesses for these durations is they're not typically leaving the business anymore either. The
Right.
new trend is, and I'm going to use small numbers. Well, depending on who's listening, let's say
Right.
it's a $10 million valuation on a business and it's going to sell for $10 million. They'll sell that business for $8 million and they're going to retain 20% of the
Mhm.
business so they can show up every day.
Yeah, but a buyer doesn't want that. A
Well,
strategic buyer
buyers are,
doesn't. They want it
yeah,
for to
it's,
ensure they can get their ROI out of you. Because what you told me was, hey, this company's growing 15, 20% a year. And it's like, okay, well, put your money where your mouth is and we'll do an earnout for you. But I don't want you just showing up and disrupting what we're trying to build, because now that's a detractor from what we're trying to accomplish. Right. And that's a problem. How do you deal with that?
so number one, everybody decides what everybody's role is going to be in basically the new business. You may be keeping the name, you may getting all the same assets, you're retaining the customer list, the vendor list, but the seller basically becomes almost like a figurehead of the business to
Hmm.
ensure nothing truly changes as far as relationships. The buyer comes in, they have 80% equity in this business. They are the majority holder
Do
and it
they
gets
typically have
established.
voting rights? I mean, do they have 100% of the voting rights, or is it
It depends.
okay?
That's what's negotiated through the transaction. And so the seller, they're able to get 80% of their equity out of the business, right? And they can use it for retirement or maybe a new venture or whatever they want. But they still have a place to go. They're not leaving. And this is what is canceling out a lot of opportunities for people because the seller, they get to the closing table and they realize if I take this $10 million dollars, and everybody thinks, oh, it's a windfall. You're going to be so damn happy. You're rich beyond wildest imaginations. Well, guess what? That money isn't everything to all people. They realize when they get up the next morning, they have nothing,
Yeah.
right? They may not want to retire. They may not want to go play golf. They may not want to garden with the wife,
Yeah,
right?
let's talk about that. The wife is all of a sudden having her husband there every day, and they're like, "Good lord!" So yeah, that's another dynamic.
Exactly. There's
Yeah.
a whole component that goes into this that you have to realize on both ends, seller's end, buyer's end,
Yes.
especially when it gets time down to the nitty gritty, and you're getting ready to close. Are both sides prepared emotionally for what happens next? And this is where, if you're thinking long term of selling your business, to talk to people, coordinate with consultants, trainers, coaches to get you there mentally as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Buyers are more prepared than sellers.
Oh, absolutely. Because they've gone through the process of looking at what they're trying to acquire with the deal thesis or whatever process you walk them through. But there's a stat of 75% of the sellers regret that decision within the following year. And it's tied to exactly what you're talking about. There was no plan B of what life looks like after I sell this company. You're known in the community and your family and everywhere else between friends, family, and community that you are a business owner of Acme Incorporated and you're this huge success, regardless of what revenue streams you're dealing with. I mean, and you take that away, we all have ego, we all have pride, and that's a punch in the gut when all of a sudden you wake up and that's gone, and you got to at 65, 70 years old reestablish who you are. You
Right.
don't do that overnight. That is a process. And so once again, yes, we say 18 to 24 months is what our ideal timeline is for what we do, but there's all that other stuff emotionally that you're talking about that really needs to be paid attention to. And that's where we use our community to come in and really say, hey, you need to talk to a life coach or a business coach or whatever it is around what this is going to look like, because it is a real problem. And the last thing we ever want is to get a successful sale over the finish line and then you regret that decision because we didn't help you pay attention to some of the softer side of what this process really entails. So yeah, it's a
Absolutely.
huge problem. And we see it in retirement in all facets, right? It's not just
Mhm.
business owners. Somebody retires after a 30, 35-year career and they wake up the next day and they didn't really think about how they're going to fill 40, 45 hours a week. It's a lot of time.
That's right.
Even if you do
You
like
may
golf
find,
or traveling or, it's like you can't do that every day for the next 30 years. And that's the other problem, right? You live, 20, 30 years into your retirement. It's like, what are you going to do? So yes, it is and that's why we say it takes a community of advisors to come in and really help facilitate that. And, it's very, very complex. There's a lot of moving parts to this.
yes. So, and I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
We scratched the surface.
Right. Yeah.
We did cover quite a bit as far as different avenues of mergers and acquisitions and buying and selling. This is a very deep topic, right? It's a very popular topic right now. So we are 33 minutes into this already.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Exactly. So hopefully the listeners are having fun too, and they're surprised it's been 33 minutes. So we are going to close this down. The Business Advocate podcast is for listeners. Just as a FYI, you didn't hear any advertisements through this. We're not promoting anything. Yes, Bennett said who his company was. I said who my company was, but that's it, right? And the reason we do that is to let you know we're not just anybody. We actually deal with this every day. Okay. So we're bringing our perspective to you, the listener. If you have any questions, you have any comments, you want to hear more on this, let us know. We'll bring Bennett on. I love talking to Bennett. He's extremely knowledgeable. And I'll be the first one to tell you it's hard to find truly knowledgeable people that work with business owners to get them to the finish line to actually sell the business. So, Bennett, thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it, Russ, and I would love to be back on and continue this because education is really the key to helping business owners get ready for this process and understanding that you can't just throw it out there and expect a buyer to come willingly to buy your company. There's a lot of complexities that are on that, and we just want to help facilitate that. So thank you for having us on and letting us just kind of, to your point, scratch the surface of this process.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. Do all the things you're supposed to do. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear future episodes. As I mentioned, you will find us on YouTube under the Business Advocate Podcast. You have to add the podcast or you're going to get some lady's other thing. So the Business Advocate Podcast, you'll find us on YouTube. Every listening platform for podcasts, we're there. So thank you very much. Bennett, if anybody has any questions and would like to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is to go to our website, Pando Consulting, and it's Pando, consultinggroup.com. And we have plenty of take action buttons that you can submit your information in there, and we'll respond immediately and set up a call. So we'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. So again, send them a question, send them a comment. You want further information? Let Bennett know. I know Bennett, and he is more than happy to help with no obligation. That's one thing that Ben and I, why we get along. We're here to help business owners at the end of the day. That is our first priority. So please take advantage of it. My name is Russell Carrier. I am the owner of First Choice Business Brokers of East Tennessee in Nashville. We thank you very much. Have a great day and stay tuned for the next episode.
Thanks, Russ.